Okay, if you've gotten this far on your bumper, you're doing pretty good. You're going to find that doing these light holes is a real pain in the rear. Doesn't look that hard, but there's a whole lot of angles and everything to contend with, and it becomes a serious pain in the butt. So one of the things I would definitely recommend is, if you don't have them already, get some of these little magnetic helpers. Really makes life easier. Now on my tabs, for my lights and everything, I had to cut 3/4 of an inch off of the length of these to make it work for the LED lights that I'm putting in there. Over here I'm already done, and I'll show you how I squared things up on it. So first off, I measured from this plate to the mount. Those aren't perfect either. I mean, you're going to find every vehicle, nothing's perfect, but they try to get it as close as possible. So our mounts are the same way, and we're going to be about the same on everything else. There's a few things you can do. Basically, from with this corner right here lined up, we're fairly close to it. I measured to my mount, and then I measured up higher on my mount, and I found I got 4 3/8 on mine. So that gives me parallel on this plane, front to back on there. After cutting the down to fit my lights, I found that the little gussets that they give you after cutting 3/4 of an inch off are the perfect angle, that if you just line up this seam right here, that ends up keeping you parallel, perpendicular, whatever you want to call it, depends on the angle you're looking at it from, to the mounts, the frame of the vehicle, the bumper, everything. So with the little magnetic helper in there like so, to keep this at, after I've marked everything and jigged it up, which you need several sets of hands, I use a little magnet to hold it together, and I find again that this angle that they cut here, it doesn't matter which way you go, the corners line up perfect. So I just held it together with a magnet and then put it on the bench and tack welded those. Then after doing that, I just put it back in here and made sure I was pretty flush with this edge and tack welded on the opposite side of this plate to hold it in place. Now if you look, I don't know if you can see it on camera, I have a little bit of a twist here. It's not 100% parallel right there. I do have double checked with several squares that I'm still square here, and I'm recessed. It looks like I'm recessed down a little bit here, but if you take a flat edge, what I was doing was holding it tight to this plate and going down until it hit the fascia of the bumper. So that is on plane with the hole, even though it looks like it got a little groove here. I think the groove will be a good spot to run a bead and then grind it back smooth, and it'll look like it was formed that way. But if you want to double check even more, you can go off of here. Now I've got the off-road upgrade, so my center section's even thicker, so that kind of makes life a little difficult. But if you go on the same plane here, you got to kind of do some angles. I wasn't able to make a speed square work, so you got to use this. You see, if I tweak that just a little bit, it lines up perfect. And now if you look at when I do tweak that, look at this gap, how it's a little off in there, it lines up perfect as well. I did that on both sets of lights here, in every direction, and found this is about as perfect as I can get it for being perpendicular, parallel, whatever you want to call it, as straight and true with the bumper and the vehicle as possible. Okay, so the next step in our bumper build is we wanted to add some gussets or more reinforcements to it. This is the beginning of it. We're going to do it's a 1/4 inch plate. It's going to basically go from top to bottom in here. I have the winch option again, so I have these holes for accessing controls and such on the winch. So I'm going to build my plate to go right around the hole like that, and it's going to get welded at all the seams. This will give, in my opinion, this is already stout stuff, but when it's on the vehicle with just the little mounts that they give you, you still get plenty of flex. with this in there, you won't get any torsional twist to the bumper at all as the extra reinforcement. So I start out, what I told my son is old school CAD. I just start out with chunks of cardboard, do my measurements of angles and lengths and stuff to get my plates and everything that's going to fit in there, and then copy it down to the steel and cut the holes. I did slotted holes just like the original, so I can move and adjust as needed. Then I'm going to mount the winch plate down. I'm still not 100% sure as to where I'm going to locate it vertically in the bumper here, if I'm going to bring it all the way up to here or down there. Looks like it could go a handful of ways, and really kind of depends on the winch you're buying too. I'm also going to add some cross structural pieces in to tie the winch plate into these, and I'm going to put a receiver hitch just below the winch plate. So I'll update you. Alright, so I finally decided where and how I'm going to space for my winch. I'm going to go down about 1 inch down from that hole. That's going to give me 8 inches from the plate to the top here, and that's going to fit most low style winches that don't have the contactor hoop over the top of the spool or drum. I was figuring that the roller fair lead is always above the hole a little bit, so if there is a cable issue, hopefully it'll hit the fair lead and not touch this edge. I'm taking a gamble, I guess, because I don't have my winch just yet. I figured if worse comes to worse, I can always angle grinder some of this off after it's coated and not worry about overheating it and having my coating come off, and then just repaint the edge. I don't want to do that, but at the same time I don't have the winch, so just taking a good guess how most of them sit in their cradles. Compared it to my other truck, I think we're going to work out okay. So basically, I didn't like the angle that they cut here to make that work, and these bolt holes line up with these reliefs that they cut in here. This edge had to be right at this edge, which there's no way in heck that would work for my purposes with the receiver hitch and everything. So long story short, I jigged mine up. I cut another 45, but this one's a little taller, so it mates to the fascia of the bumper better than the original cut that they had in there, because theirs would have taken it if I followed the contours right at that bend. Well, I'm about a half or 3/4 of an inch above the bend at the top of the plate. So this is what I came up with. I've cut my receiver tubing. I don't know if you can see it in here very well. My 45 does not go all the way up. I actually have a still a 90-degree end there, so it's going to go be welded into the vertical surface and the 45-degree angle down below. Now the fun part's cutting the hole. Pass that through there. Okay, so we are now trying to mount our pre-runner bar on the bumper. You know, I'm no expert fabricator, but the best I can say is mark and lay out things like crazy. So I found center of the front panel of the bumper here, then marked in from the edges so that I met up with my bar where it's going to meet. Just do it all incrementally. I knew it was going to go on and off 100 times as we're little by little fitting this. So I started out with several different ideas or jigs to achieve the same positioning and angle every time, and got a little overcomplicated, so I had to stick with the old adage, keep it simple. So it ain't much, but this was my quick and simple solution, was just a sawhorse, a 2x4, and a hook on it. I've marked center on my bar. I've got center on my bumper. I've marked how far in and down I'm going. I've even brought lines on all my seams and mated them up to my bar so I can achieve the same location every time. And all I'm doing is taking very fine point marker, lay it flat against the steel, and then mark around the tube. And you're only getting maybe a 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 off every time, but I like to go little by little because it's, you know, measure twice, cut once kind of thing. Take a little bit off of a time until it's sitting down tight how you want it. Here's our coped, mitered, notched, whatever you want to call it, tube on our bumper. So like I said, with the marker, just a little at a time till you get a nice tight fit. Now she's tacked in place. We'll get the other tubes on, and when we're done, we'll weld the hell out of it. Okay, so we're working on the outside pre-runner hoops here. I got this one pretty much set. Just like center hoop, do your measuring and marking best you can to find equal lengths, center, whatever you want to call it. I mean, everybody's got a different term for it. And then slowly go around with your marker, with your thin marker, and cope a little at a time. You're going to find with this one, my rough cut on this started at about 20-25 degrees. Depending on the way you measure it, I guess, but that's what I ended up starting with. And then just kept marking and taking off a little at a time till I got a nice tight edge. On this side, you can see I'm just starting. How all the extra I've got, the angles don't really match yet because I've got over a 1/2 inch of extra material to give me more room to play with to get it down to the same. That's going to be, I mean, theoretically, if you do the same process, you should end up at the same spot, but that's going to be the big challenge, is being 100% symmetrical, or as good as a person can be. Well, here we go. Here's our completed bumper. It's kind of been a while in the making, only working on it a little bit here and there. Wish I could tell you how many hours I had into it. Unfortunately, I never thought of keeping track until halfway through the process. But she's all done finally. I coated it with rhino lining, which is a bed liner. Got that nice texturing and everything to it. I found this stuff is a lot more durable than powder coating or paint or anything like that, so that's why I chose to go with it. We've only got the 2 set of lights, or 1 set of lights right now. They're wired into the OE fog lights, which unfortunately, one of the things I don't like about Chevrolet is that those lights will only work when the headlights are on low. If you put them on high, it automatically turns those off. I don't like that. In the future, I will wire them to their own switch so I can have them on whenever, but for now, that's what I'm doing. I figured I'd wait till I get my spotlights in there and then run all the wiring and put in the switches and everything. Again, I got my receiver tube. Can't wait to use that for putting water, doing whatever with trailers. It's very handy compared to doing it on the back. And hopefully I'll be getting a winch to put in here pretty soon. Hope this video helped anybody that's stumbling or working on one of these. If you have any questions, shoot me an email and I'll help you any way I can. Thanks.